If there's one thing South and North Korea have in common, it's a complicated, if not downright difficult, relationship with Japan. But it also seems they're both working to heal the rift that goes back to Tokyo's colonization of the Korean Peninsula for much of the first half of the 20th century, i.e. the period just before the Koreas were divided. I'm Alex Jensen for NK Now. Let's look closer into what's going on behind the scenes. So while most media coverage has been focusing lately on inter-Korean ties and Pyongyang's standoff with Washington, it's been reported that officials from the North and Japan secretly met in Vietnam. According to the Washington Post, this clandestine rendezvous happened in July without the US knowing about it. And Seoul-based online news outlet the Daily NK claims they're actually trying to arrange a summit between North Korean Chairman Kim Jong-un and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. If it can be organized, those talks would apparently happen in November. Let's just address a little further how reliable this information is. So the Daily NK cited an unnamed North Korean official based in China, claiming that Pyongyang reached out to Japan in May, and a committee was even put together back then to arrange a summit. As for the secret talks in Vietnam, the Post referred to its sources as people familiar with the matter. The representatives who met there were reportedly Shigeru Kitamura, a senior Japanese intelligence official, and Kim Song-hae of the North Korean ruling party's propaganda and agitation department. It's never ideal when we hear these things come from anonymous sources, but it's also par for the course when it comes to North Korea news. Presuming these reports can be trusted, this Pyongyang-Tokyo relationship could place wider denuclearization dialogue at risk, or at least it indicates some daylight between the US and its ally Japan. Officials in Washington are said to be annoyed, but Japanese officials allegedly feel they cannot rely on the US to tackle Tokyo's agenda, that they fear being passed by. And that brings us to the question of what that agenda is. Naturally, there is some overlap. Tokyo doesn't want North Korea to be armed with powerful nukes any more than the US does. Japan also wants to settle the issue of its citizens who were abducted by the North between the 1970s and 80s. Pyongyang stands accused of kidnapping 17 Japanese citizens, but only 5 of whom have been repatriated. North Korea insists the matter is settled, but the North wants some resolution of its own. That is, compensation for Tokyo's colonial-era abuses. Now that's a thorny issue even here in South Korea, whose ties with Japan were normalized and a compensation agreement reached decades ago. Most here feel, though, that Tokyo hasn't demonstrated sufficient repentance, especially on issues related to the abuse of Korean people. And North Korea has turned on Japan lately, with an official statement carried by state-run media accusing the Japanese reactionaries of becoming more and more impudent, far from apologizing and reflecting on their hideous past crimes. A spokesman for the North's Korea-Asia-Pacific Peace Committee said, while keeping mum about the hideous crimes that took the lives of millions of Koreans, the Japanese government is hyping the issue of a few abductees. Frankly, it's unclear at this point what to expect next, but both sides seem to want a summit. Japan wants to resolve that abductee issue, and even made progress this week with the return to Tokyo of a videographer who was arrested in North Korea earlier this month. North Korea wants compensation to the tune of billions of dollars and an escape from its economic isolation due to sanctions. But what's dangerous is if outside countries continue to deal with Pyongyang individually, because that's when the North can play one off against the other. And maybe that's exactly what we're seeing with this Japan situation.